We are Rogue Media Sports.
You haven't heard about the McCrispy yet? Well, then, you probably haven't heard the sweet silence after the first crispy bite either. Go try it for yourself to hear the best nut sound you've ever heard.
Walmart Plus members save on meeting up with friends. Save on having them over for dinner with free delivery with no hidden fees or markups. That's groceries, plus napkins, plus that vegetable chopper to make things a bit easier. Plus, members save on gas to go meet them in their neck of the woods. Plus, when you're ready for the ultimate sign of friendship, start a show together with your included Paramount Plus subscription. Walmart Plus members save on this plus so much more. Start a 30-day free trial at walmartplus.com. Paramount Plus Essential Plan only. Separate registration required. See Walmart Plus terms and conditions.
It is Matt Mosley. It is the Doomsday podcast, and Cowboys find a way to do it. They win it 26-24 at home. Ed and I have just observed this. I've just come straight from the stadium, and we are recording this in the aftermath of this thing. We have all sorts of things lined up for you in terms of reaction. You'll hear from Jerry. You'll hear from Leighton Vander Esch, but Ed, it is the week-to-week nature of this league that you never know exactly how this thing is going to go. And is it too much of a stretch for me to say that the offense sort of bailed the defense out today?
No, I don't think it's a stretch to say that. It is kind of remarkable that we keep talking about the fact that the defense is probably the better unit of the two on this team at the moment. And that's the first time it's been that way in several decades. But this was definitely a performance by the offense that has to inspire some confidence going forward. You know, for Dak Prescott and Zeke Elliott, it was like, 2016 at Jerry World all over again. And you make the point that, in the NFL, every week is its own entity, and it's unrelated in any way to the previous week. For example, last week, the defensive-minded Matt Patricia Lions won their first game. They limited Tom Brady to 133 passing yards, and the Patriots scored only 10 points. Then on Sunday, the beleaguered Dak Prescott had twice as many passing yards, or nearly so, as the five-time Super Bowl champion in New England against the very same opponent. And a Cowboys offense that ranked among the most futile in the league scored a season-high 26 points. So it is the nature of the game to have unexpected outcomes from week to week. And this was certainly one of them, if not from the standpoint of the Cowboys winning at home against an opponent that's now 1-3. At least it was from the standpoint of how well they seemed to execute on offense after how poorly they did so for most of the previous three games.
And they did get back to their bread and butter. And Ed, I know you've got a lot of information as we kind of dig in on this performance by Zeke Elliott. That's what they did in 2016. And I think that was part of the theme for this week. We heard some of the goofiness from Jerry trying to say there wasn't a huge difference between the Cowboys and the Rams. I still think that's a kind of a stretch for him to throw that out there. But there was some strangeness coming from the Cowboys. But then they also talked about there are going to be some new wrinkles. I don't know if we saw some amazing new wrinkles. What we did see is good things seem to happen when they throw the ball downfield. Whether they're completing all the passes or not, it does seem to keep these defenses honest. Lots to come on that front. And, of course, Glenn Stretch Smith, our former Cowboys coach and scout, will join us to grade the efforts of the Cowboys. Cowboys with a big win, and we talk about it. Frito, play the music, please. It is at Doomsday Podcast, and by the way, thank you, everyone. And Ed, I try to share all this information with you. Another record week for us last week, and whether it's on Stitcher, whether it's on Apple Podcast, all the different places, Spotify, more and more people. Facebook seems to be a big player for us, so we appreciate everybody being a part of this thing, and we're really on a great pace for this season, and that's an exciting thing. And, Ed, we've had two horrific losses. Had the one win against the Giants. Giants down right now to the Saints. So isn't it strange that last week it felt like the sky was falling and Now Cowboys sit there at 2-2, and you saw what happened to the Eagles today. And you look around the rest of the league or the rest of the NFC East, and Cowboys, as they sit here today, are in a pretty good position.
Yeah, I'm a little uncomfortable with the use of the word "we" there when you said that we have had 2 losses. I guess I don't have the same attachment to the franchise.
I guarantee you we'll have to go to the tape, but that does not sound like anything I would do.
That is what you said, though. However, it's very sad, and maybe through some creative editing we can get rid of it.
There's no way I said that, but okay.
This criticism of you will also have to go away. But I think the thing that stands out is that the Cowboys have one offensive player who really inspires fear in opposing defenses, and with the ball in his hands, as both a runner and a receiver, Ezekiel Elliott reminded us why he's that player for the Cowboys. We think of him as this, great punishing rusher, but he really belongs in the same company with, Todd Gurley and Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara when it comes to being a premier all-around back. He's that dynamic player that when you talk to offensive coaches, they want because he can create unique mismatches. And in this particular game, he had a season-high 29 touches. He had a career-high 240 yards from scrimmage. He created 4 explosive plays, caught a 38-yard touchdown pass that turned out merely to be the second most important catch of the game because he had the 34-yarder to set up the game-winning field goal. And, now twice after losses and the ensuing criticism, Jason Garrett and the offensive coordinator, Scott Linehan, have responded with more creative, more aggressive game plans. And after the game, Linehan told me, quote, "Get the ball in 21's hands and good things happen. He's the matchup in our favor." And I think the most obvious mismatch in this game, Matt, was the Lions ranking last in the NFL in rushing against Elliott, the NFL's rushing leader. And the Cowboys came into the game with one offensive play for more than 30 yards, which tied with the Patriots for the fewest in the NFL. And Elliott creates plays of 19, 38, 41, and 34 yards. And I think a final point is that he was really beyond amazing in demonstrating how complete a back he is. To this point in the season, Elliott had caught passes mostly as a check down option. And against the Lions, he was a primary receiver. He was throwing the ball with blockers in front of him. That's how he scored his touchdown. And there were times, I think, also, in summary, that he was targeted down the field when he was matched up against a linebacker in an especially favorable situation. And really, that's the play that won the game for the Cowboys in the final minute and a half.
Yeah, it was. And, when you have, we've talked about it, and we've talked about what the Cowboys don't have a lot. And that's interesting today that Terrence Williams, for the first time in his career with the Cowboys, was not active in this game. Bryce Butler was, but we certainly didn't see much from Bryce Butler in this game, if anything. And so, we talk about so many of these. Okay, here are their shortcomings. But the one, borderline elite type player that they have, this is what they need to do on a weekly basis. And isn't it funny?
I don't think he's borderline elite. I think he's one of the top 10 players in the NFL.
Well, okay, I think I probably would just call him elite. Let's take borderline off of there. But I would say that the way they used him today, it then becomes a head scratcher on those days. And I know sometimes they get behind, they love to say, well, we got behind the sticks today, or we got downs, we couldn't run. But I mean, when you see how he was used today and how devastating he can be on a defense, it just makes you wonder how in the world would you just not plan everything around him, which makes you think, Ed, from a week-to-week basis, sometimes they almost probably outthink themselves. Hey, let's try some of these other things when, hey, we've got this unbelievable player. And to a certain extent, it was a little bit more like, you remember when the Vikings didn't have just a ton of weapons to go with Adrian Peterson back in those days, and he would have enormous numbers. And what did they do? They fed him the ball over and over and over, and these backs tend to get in a rhythm when you do that. And I think we saw it. But you're right, when you get him in the open field, and then when you throw it downfield to him, the wheel route. People always give me a hard time for how I say that. Say wheel route, Ed.
Wheel route.
Okay. Yes, I can't say that, but he has devastating speed, and I think what it is we're so used to teams. Now you see, like the Atlanta today, Calvin Ridley went crazy. I mean, we've seen Julio in the past. We're so used to seeing teams with these incredibly athletic, fast wide receivers that's where we spend all our time. When you have a back who can do all that, today was one of those reminders that he can do it all. And so why get away from anything? I mean, this was a historical type performance.
And he said, of the two big, plays he had in the passing game, the 38-yard touchdown and the 38-yard catch to set up the game-winning field goal, he said of the 34-yard wheel route play, he said, I've been trying to get to that play for a while. We ran it a couple times in practice and hit it. So he's been advocating for this sort of role, and I can't imagine why there would be any hesitation on the coach's part not to go ahead and use it. He's obviously demonstrated in the Pittsburgh game and the San Francisco game last year, that he's a very capable receiver and he can make explosive plays. And it really is something I think they need to develop and exploit more. He said of the one play, called it the Linehan play. And that every time they throw that screen pass play where he's got people leading him down the field, including Joe Looney, almost 40 yards down the field, making a crushing block at the goal line.
Wasn't that impressive?
He said that has worked almost every time he's got 3 or 4 touchdown passes on that very play in his career.
Yeah, you're right. You would think now they understand, let's put this ball in our best players' hands. Now, it does seem like they have an easier time committing to that, Ed, at home than they do on the road. Sometimes you face a little more adversity on the road and they get away from it. I'll also say this. I think it was very important, especially for Dak, to get in a little rhythm early. And by the way, there was some kind of mock cheering in the press box as he approached 200 yards today. Dak's got to get past 200. And as he was at 180, then it got to 190, but then he got to 205, and he ends up at 255. But Ed, we saw it in that game against the Giants, the long pass to Tavon Austin, which went for a touchdown in that game. In this game, it was Michael Gallup. You and I visited with him, and really did make a nice catch out there. And just it was a basic go route where was able to kind of, with a nice move at the line of scrimmage, was able to sort of beat the press coverage, and the throw was on the money. That just has to do so much for Dak's confidence and just the overall feel of this offense to have any threat downfield. And I had someone tell me this week, Ed, somebody that a longtime personnel person basically said, I believe the Cowboys only have 2 real viable NFL receivers on their team right now. And that is Cole Beasley, and that is Michael Gallup. And we didn't know how long it was going to take Gallup. At least today, it looks like he's not too far away.
And we talked last week about how this was an offense that needed to throw the deep ball, introduce a vertical element in their offense. And when you've got Elliott now as a receiver stretching the boundary, to the sideline and down the field, and you're throwing to Gallup, you threw a deep ball to Tavon Austin that should have been a touchdown. Then you're making the defense defend the whole field, and it forces them, doesn't allow them to put as many people in the box, which makes your running game more effective. They really did what they needed to do. And there was one interesting comment during the broadcast that Fox carrying the game. They said, the announce team said something to the effect of, they had talked to Jason Garrett, and Garrett said that the one positive from all of the criticism and the recent losing was that they had gone back to some of the things that Dak likes to do and that fit him best. And my thought was, why would you ever go away from that? Why would you ever create game plans and call plays that don't allow your quarterback to do what he does best? It was interesting that, he came into this game needing a big performance desperately, and he had the highest, passer rating of his career in a 2016 game against the Lions. And he pretty much did it again. I think if you looked at what he did, his numbers might not wow anyone based on the standards of passing, in the NFL anymore. But, man, I thought he looked really decisive and confident. He was accurate. He put it on Beasley in places where Beasley could make a play after the catch. He was on target, like we said, to Austin down the field for what should have been a touchdown. I think the guy just threw the ball, exceptionally well. And, I know in talking to guys like Scott Linehan, that they really respect the way, as a young player, he handles all the criticism and scrutiny that comes with his position. Linehan told me, in fact, he takes a lot of scrutiny. He's unflappable at such a young age. You just don't really see that all that often from a quarterback who's only early in his third season and has been subjected to as much criticism and comparison with Tony Romo and so forth as Prescott has been. And he's really responded this week in particular, I think. He came into the game averaging 4.5 yards per pass attempt, which was better only than Sam Bradford. And Bradford just got demoted from starter to third team by the Arizona Cardinals. Well, Prescott more than doubled that in this game against Matt Patricia's defense, went to 9.4 yards per attempt. And if the Cowboys can achieve these kinds of numbers with these two players, then I think they can have the success that they had back in 2016.
And, speaking of putting people in really good positions, I noticed that, one of the things that seems to work for this offensive line is when you get them out and you move them around. You noted that Joe Looney made it all the way down 30 yards down the field to make that block on the same play. You had Martin was out there. Obviously, Connor Williams is a real athletic guy. If you have a tremendously athletic offensive line, go ahead and pull those guys and get them out in space because they seem to perform really well. Sometimes, at least at this stage in his career, Connor Williams gets overwhelmed at the point of, right there at the point of attack. And if you can sort of put them in good spots. And by the way, did you notice on that one big run that Zeke had? That there was a defensive lineman, I think it was Williams, he had for the Lions. He had pretty much blown that play up, and he had kind of overwhelmed Connor Williams on that play. But that was a Zeke play where he was able to elude that first rusher, and then it led to a really big play. So and by the way, you talked about scrutiny on this quarterback. How about the scrutiny this week on the guy that you and I spent a lot of time with at training camp? Scott Linehan, and kind of the speculation on his future, and would Garrett at some point want to take back the play calling? It puts him in an odd spot because it's like you can't just completely tear up what you're doing, but everybody's sitting there watching the Rams, watching the Vikings, and going, why can't you guys look like that? Why you're watching the Chiefs? Why do you guys look so much different than that? And I thought he responded pretty well as a play caller.
Yeah, one of the, and this was a game I was just thinking about this. We've been advocating for them to, use Prescott's unique mobility, and they did run a lot of zone read type stuff, but he never really ran with the football. In fact, I forgot when I was checking the final stats to see if he had any official rushing attempts. I know he got sacked 3 times, but they did use the RPO concept to advantage. I thought in this game more than others. One of the criticisms of the Garrett Linehan offense is that the receivers are constantly catching the ball coming back to the quarterback instead of going down the field. And I think in this game there were opportunities for guys to catch the ball coming across the middle, or running an arrow route, kind of like Beasley did, where they're moving downfield as they're making the catch. And then the play to Gallup and the play to Austin both exemplified that same approach as well, and hopefully there's more of that going forward. I think Jerry's comparison of the Cowboys to the Rams is utterly ridiculous, even by Jerry's standards. It's utterly ridiculous, but they played exceptionally well on offense for the first time this year. Let's just see them do this with some level of consistency, because I think that most people felt the same way coming out of the victory over the Giants, that they had sort of come to the conclusion as to what they were on offense and would now and forevermore design a game plan that fit their personnel, and then they failed to do so, and they backslid. So let's see them do this on a consistent basis before we lavish too much praise on the play caller and the head coach. Yeah.
Well, speaking of Jerry, I did have a chance to catch up with him after the ball game outside of the locker room where everybody assembles, and there were up to about 50 to 60 cameras and reporters gathering around Jerry. And I asked Jerry, after a week of talking about schemes and play calling, if he liked what he saw from from this game.
What'd you think of the overall play calling? Lots been made about some of the creativity and other schemes and all. How'd you feel like that played out?
I thought we had a good. I never thought today at any time that we didn't have some offense and some options in our offense. They made good plays. I'll tell you this. They made some third downs on some catches and throws that will tell you whether they're covered or not. Throw it in there because those guys were Houdinis, and but for 2 or 3 great plays. Now, at the end, we got us a couple of those, and that was our difference. But, no, I think that we should all commend the not only the play of the players, but the coaching today for the Cowboys.
Did this game also kind of validate why you guys picked Leighton Vander Esch in the first round? What did you think of this game and filling in for Sean Lee?
Well, I saw him do what we thought he could do, and that is cover a lot of ground. He's intimidating for a quarterback because his span is so visible, just his length. And then again, he does pass defend well. But I thought he did a real good job in pursuing and going from sideline to sideline. I'm really proud of the way he's played the last 2 games.
Are you starting to get the feeling that you're going to have to sit down and talk about big numbers with DeMarcus Lawrence?
Well, he's got a nice one that he's using this year.
That's true.
So I know how to spell it.
There are the numbers when Dak throws the ball down the field, not even completions. When he throws the ball 20 more yards down the field multiple times in a game are huge in terms of them winning and losing games. Do you think this is more than a one-game thing, but it's a trend or a direction throwing the ball more down the field?
The answer is yes. And I have not thought this year that we weren't going to throw the ball downfield. It's been a part of our plans, and so I would expect us to good things happen when we start trying to take it downfield relative to what we can do. The stuff you saw, Zeke's touchdown on the throw to him out of the backfield, and then actually the last one there. Good things happen when we start using those other backs. I'd like to see number 10 get the ball more on some crossing routes because he can. He doesn't have Beasley's separation and quickness at the point, but he has the speed that can give you some plays. And so I like the options with our passing game. I'm not as concerned about our passing game as the stats would normally make you think I should be.
What's the difference, Jerry, between 1 and 3? What now they're 2-2 and now 1 and 3?
Well, it's so early, but these games, it's always that one that you can remember. And so this is a big win for us. And we did not underestimate Detroit as a team coming in here in a home game. That was always going to be a tough one for us to win in Seattle. We had a big challenge on that one from the get-go just because it was in Seattle. And so, but we know it doesn't all start or end here. But we've got to make into the team that if we continue to improve defensively, I know that we'd want to have some things back that happened to us out there today, but we've got good coaching.
You had David Irving coming back. What kind of difference can he make for you?
Yes, and excited to have him back. And he'll be full-blown out there with us next week. But he'll be a real addition.
You had a chance to visit with him and see where he is mentally?
I have. And yes, I have visited with him several times and within the rules. But I have visited with him, and he's anxious to get back on the field.
You think he's ready to contribute immediately? I mean, do you think he's there, or are you going to have to ramp it up?
There's always that shape thing, but he's so unique physically that I wouldn't dismiss him helping us immediately, especially since interior here we've got a little, with Woods a question mark here. Probably our interior is probably where we're the thinnest right now in the defensive line. All right. Thanks, Jerry.
Appreciate you.
And there he is, Jerry Jones. Ed, one of my favorite things from that, and I think you would agree, is Jerry Jerry did go ahead in praising some of the play calling, some of the coaching in this game. Coach Jones got involved, and he said that he did feel like he needed to see Tavon Austin on some more crossing routes.
I will say this. I made this comment during the game, but I thought Tavon, for a guy who's as small as he is, Tavon Austin really does get in there and block. And I know receivers don't get a lot of credit for that, but given his position, given his size, I think he deserves it. And I remember when we were at a training camp talking to Linehan about what kind of impression Tavon had made on him, and he said that he was very popular in the receiving room and had emerged as a leader. And one of the reasons was that in their first preseason game, he threw the 2 best blocks in the entire game. So maybe Jerry has a point, but that's one of the things that we didn't consider, right? Last week when we talked about who might handle play calling going forward, we didn't ever think that possibly Jerry would take it over.
I always leave that as a possibility.
I think you're wise to do so.
Yeah, and Jerry did say that from up above, he said he has a better vantage point than the players from where he is, and he felt like, which by the way was a huge play when Dak fumbled that ball and was able to pick it back up and get rid of it. I mean, and avoid a big, obviously a turnover and a big loss on that play. But Jerry said that he was hoping there that Dak would have seen Cole Beasley running alone.
Well, I got to tell you that when that play began to unfold, it made me think of the famous or infamous play that Romo made very early in his career against the Rams when the ball got snapped over his head. He ran back 20 yards, eluded people, ran up the sideline, and actually made a positive play out of that. But Dak at least didn't accept a negative play, which he did earlier in the game when he took a sack that took them out of field goal range. That was obviously a big mistake for a quarterback who's played as much as he has. And I guess my final point on the offense would be, I think they've got to find a solution for their red zone woes. They were 1 for 3 scoring touchdowns in the red zone, which is not normal for a team that runs the ball well. Usually the teams that can run the ball well have great success in the red zone. That has not been the Cowboys' experience this year. And in fact, they reached the point of desperation where they actually put Rico Gathers in the game. And I know you must have gotten your Baylor T-shirt out for this one and waved it like a terrible towel. But Gathers gets in the game, and Dak throws a high ball to him when he's trying to make a post-up type play. I mean, really, you're this desperate. The guy hardly plays at all. He has 0 receptions in the NFL in 3 seasons with the Cowboys, and you're throwing him the ball on 3rd down in the red zone.
I think probably, if I had to guess, they tried Swaim and the ball was a little high for him on the other side right before that. If I had to guess, Rico just didn't run onto the field in time for that other play, and then they had to race him out there, Ed, for the 3rd down play.
I think if Jerry called a play in this game, this was the one he called. We all know he's the reason Rico has a job.
Yeah, and boy, they keep him active. This poor guy they took from Stanford must not really be ready for prime time. And by the way, I did notice your point on Tavon's a good one because, there was a couple of times, like even on design run plays, where they lined him up in a spot you would always put a fullback or a tight end. I mean, it was like an F-back
inside, like the defensive end to throw a block.
Yes. And I thought, I watched that one time happen. And I thought, why are you using Tavon Austin? But it's like you said, maybe he's one of their better blockers, so they decided to put him out there. But lots to get to. Ed, you and I will when we sign off this evening, we'll be able to cover some of our thoughts on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I got a few.
Yeah, side of the ball where they struggled. But let's do our very, very famous and was getting a lot of acclaim out there. That's a stretch with former Cowboys coach and scout Glenn Stretch Smith. He provides his grades for this game. We call them out and assign grades, and we do it next. First of all, I want to talk about Hodges Capital. And, the guys at Hodges Capital, Clark Hodges and Craig Hodges, do such an amazing job. They come from a business that was started by their father, and Craig was heavily involved as well, but Don Hodges, and it is it's a business for folks that have high wealth, and it's also a place for folks that are just looking to have a great retirement. And that's the place. And they started it many, many years ago with a few equity funds, and the thing grew and grew to the point when MSNBC or CNBC, whichever one it is, that is constantly talking about stocks and all this kind of thing. They have Craig Hodges on constantly to talk about where the markets are headed. And so when you think Hodges Capital, that's a place you need to get involved, and you can do it right down there in downtown Dallas, and they just do an extremely good job, and we love having them involved with the Doomsday podcast. It is the Doomsday Podcast, and we are joined like we are every single week by Glenn Stretch Smith, former Cowboys scout and coach, and he gives out his grades. You can read and hear Stretch on WFAA, Channel 8. He's always on there with Del Hansen. And Stretch, huge win for the Cowboys to get back to 2-2. I know you were doom and gloom. But boy, they're riding high out there now, and boy, everybody's back on the bandwagon. Here we go. Just before we start breaking down and assigning the grades, Stretch, what is your overall takeaway, your biggest, your couple of takeaways from the Cowboys 26-24 last minute thriller?
Well, I think they know what they have in a really good running back. They got him matched up outside. Big in the passing game. I think they're starting to understand a little bit better, and I'm going to say Lanahan is, with what he's going to have to do to really move the football. And I'm saying move the football, move the chains. They stayed ahead of the chains and did a nice job with all that. So offensively, it's that. And then, Lawrence getting 3 sacks. They got some pressure without having to bring more than 5 guys. And when you can do those things and still play coverage, it gives you a chance to be able to, to not give up big plays. Now, unfortunately, in this game, they did give up some big plays, and it almost cost them. But I do like that they're able to consistently get pressure, bringing only 4 and 5 guys. And to me, that makes sense on the long haul, to be able to give your defense, a chance to be successful through a 16-game span.
All right, let's start Stretch, and Ed, always feel free to jump in anywhere here, but let's start with the quarterback position. Dak had been under a lot of scrutiny, and of course, it's well documented that the man has not had any games of over 200-yard passing in some time, and in fact, got to go back to last season. I think week 14 perhaps, but comes out and has a solid day. What did you think of this quarterback, and was it did he look drastically different than the guy you remember watching last week?
Well, I think they designed some shots down the field for him. He took those shots. Now, unfortunately, Austin dropped the ball in the end zone. That would have been a touchdown, and that, I believe, would have put him over 300 yards. So, you got to keep taking those shots with him. These people have been critical of him throwing the deep ball, and can he push the ball outside the numbers? And I think, today he dropped some balls in there, and that's what you're going to need to see him do. That's what he's going to have to continue to do is to be able to do that. I also like that, on the screens and on those things where they get the ball to the perimeter, I mean, he's not afraid to give a little ground and be able to bring that rush to him and still get that ball out accurately while he's moving his feet. So he's accurate with the football, and I know that he's going to rest well tonight, knowing that he's calmed down some of the storm here in the Metroplex.
What do you think about, and one thing that grabbed my attention, Ed, I don't know if you thought the same thing. One thing he's got to do is know when to slide or when to get out of bounds. And you just can't. I know he's kind of built to take some punishment here and there, but boy, you don't want to take the unnecessary punishment. And he kind of hung around too long over on the sideline on one of those and just got tattooed over there. And so he gets back up. He's a courageous guy. But boy, one thing quarterbacks can't do is take those things and expose themselves when they don't really need to. Now let's run through some of these positions. Let's go with the you mentioned him already, but the running back who had one of his best days ever. In fact, his best all-around day when you put in his receiving yards with his 152 rushing yards. And by the way, Stretch, would you give Dak a B, or where did you have Dak?
I'd give him a B plus. I mean, I thought he was really on the verge of getting an A. So he's a B plus guy and a winning effort.
All right. And what about Zeke?
I'm going to give Zeke an A. I thought everything he did today was spot on. You saw him. He was patient with the zone. I mean, he cut it back in there twice when they were in two tight end formations, really made some nice runs. He's a patient runner. I love how he's a downhill runner. I love how he finishes his runs. And I've got to give him an A, an overall effort, including the fact that they got him mismatched outside in the passing game.
Is there any reason in your mind, Stretch, that they can't do this with a lot more regularity, use him in the passing game like they did on design plays?
Well, I think, Ed, you make a good point. I think it also depends on who they match up, out there with him. If they match up, a nickel guy, I think Detroit today kind of had the dime guy that was matched in there with him, and it was a matchup that Lanahan likes. So if you get the right matchup, I think you can continue to do that. I think it's just going to depend on what personnel, the other team, the defense decides to put in the game. And if they do put that dime personnel in the game, who's to say you can't show empty, bring him back into the backfield and let him hammer you running the football? So I think defensive coordinators are going to have a challenge one way or the other, either dealing with him in the passing game or, obviously we've known he can run the football. I just like that they let him run out of that slot. He pressed that route up the field, and knowing that he gave that outside box, to Dak to throw that football, and it was a critical play at a critical time in the game. So I do think that it's something they can continue to do.
All right, what about the offensive line play that you saw? Ed already commented on Looney getting all the way downfield on that one little screen pass out to the right or swing pass and leading the convoy. It really seems like, Stretch, from what I can tell, these guys are at their best when you kind of get them out and move them around a little bit, and they do a pretty nice job of picking up their blocks in space. What did you see from those guys?
And I agree with that point too. I mean, they're an athletic offensive line, and anytime you can allow those guys to get out there on the perimeter, there's a lot of offensive lines, top-heavy guys. I mean, guys that get out in space and they want to fall down. That's not the case with this group, so trying to understand it. But today, this offensive line was they got a hat on a hat, and they are really good in space. So playing to their strengths, I felt like, is what the entire offense did. And I got to give the offensive line group a B+ also.
All right, and then when we look at these wide receivers, Gallup gets the big play.
This is the interesting grade coming up right here, the wide receivers and tight ends. I think this is the interesting grade.
And we know, Stretch, this is the least I don't think Stretch has ever hated a group of tight ends like he does this group here in Dallas, although I thought Swaim.
That's a strong word.
But now let's start with the wide receivers. And Gallup certainly made a big play early in the ball game. But what was your takeaway on the wide receivers out there, and the fact Terrence Williams did not even suit out today?
Yeah, that's interesting what they're doing with TW. I'm not real sure what the feeling is inside the building over there, but Cole Beasley made some double moves that allowed Dak to get the football in the middle of the field. Had a big drop by Austin. It should have been a touchdown, and Gallup catches a ball that he should have caught. I still don't see the production out of this entire receiving core, and only because of Cole Beasley. Am I going to give this group a C? I'm still saying there is not the separation. There were too many times that Dak is still having to hold on to the football. He's not able to get it out on time with the guys where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be there. And I'm telling you, this receiving core, I'm hoping that they can get Bryce Butler. They start feeling confident. Because even though Bryce Butler does not like to run inside slants and run some of those inside cuts, he can get it vertically. He can run some double moves. So, you know what? This group needs help. And at best, I'm going to give them a C with today's effort.
Ooh, man. I mean, Ed, does that surprise you? Did you think they were going to get a little better grade from Stretch?
I did, but I certainly defer to his expertise, given that he watches the tape and I don't.
Oh, okay. Well, Ed, you ought to come watch it with Stretch.
That would be fun.
Yeah, Stretch and I always hole up, watch the tape. We'd love to have you sometime.
Oh, you watch tape too now? Okay, I gotcha.
You
know what? It's amazing. So do all of my Twitter followers. All of my Twitter followers, turns out, they watch tape.
Yeah,
I like it, Ed. Don't let him draw you off sides, buddy. The hard count doesn't draw you off sides.
I've known as kind of a film jockey for sure. But all right, so C for the receivers. Did you just include the tight ends in that? Because I thought Swain. Swain brought it today.
Like yeah, I do like that. They got Swain out in the open field on a boot back into the weak side, and that was a big play. I thought that they did an adequate job of blocking, which allowed Zeke in some of those two tight sets to get loose. But yeah, I'm going to group that entire group is just going to get a C overall, and celebrate. It's a winning grade.
All right, Stretch, it might be my phone's fault, but keep that phone really close to your mouth and when you're kind of moving around and you're making those great points because you're kind of coming and going on us. Let's go over.
Gesturing wildly. Something you learned from Hanson on Channel 8.
That's right. Oh, man. All right, let's go over. Did I miss anything? I think we covered everything there. I'm not going to make you grade like the kicker or the punter or anything. I do want to go over.
The kicker was damn good, 4 for 4.
He was. Let's give him an A and just move on about our business. He makes kicks.
Attaboy. You looked at it and you felt good about it.
Yeah. I like what he's doing, and they were right down the middle. I like the operation, as we like to call it. I like the timing of it and the whole thing. Okay, over on the defensive side of the ball, lots of some pretty big chunk plays by Detroit in this game, and it looked like that they were going to pull that thing off, especially with a couple of big plays late in that game. Stretch, let's start with an area you've been tougher probably than anybody in the local media or any of our folks on this secondary. And I was told this morning, by the way, that according to Pro Football Focus, and boy, they watch a lot of film, that Byron Jones, the number 1 rated cornerback in all of the NFL right now, based on his coverage skills. Yeah,
the Lions certainly seem reluctant to throw at him.
No, they didn't, for whatever reason. They did not like that matchup, and they were really going at Awuzie. They were going at that side. Secondary wise, I thought they got exposed a little bit. I thought Edwards got exposed a little bit. I thought Woods got exposed some. And I'm talking about from a coverage standpoint. He took a few, not great angles, and usually he really does an okay job back there as a kind of a forced tackler. But this group today gave up too many big plays, and because of that, I've got to give this group a C. Now, I will say this: Awuzie did make a play on the slant. He did make. He sat on a few routes and was able to. Was able to get his hand on the ball. But whenever you start saying I'm going to rate a guy number 1, I need him to be getting some turnovers. I need him to get his hand on the football. That's what I'm not seeing. And
still no interceptions for this defense.
Yeah, and it makes a good point. You know what? They didn't really throw it at him, and it's hard to get an interception when you don't throw it your way. But this secondary is going to have to start getting their hands on some footballs, and it's going to have to be really critical because they've got to have turnovers. And I'm talking about from here moving forward, if this team wants to do what they want to do, which is, stay in the middle of this division race, they got to get some turnovers on the back end.
Especially when your offense is not that prolific and typically not very explosive, you need some short field opportunities.
Excellent point. And that's exactly what I would say if I was talking. If you're talking to the team, if we're talking to the team, hey, we need to get our guy the football on the plus 40. We need to get our guy the football on the plus 35. We need down in that plus territory. You're going to have to get some turnovers. The sacks are going to continue to be there, but you got those guys on the back end got to get their hands on some footballs.
Yeah, and your point about Heath's well taken. He on the boundary there. You've always taught me, Stretch. You've got to shut down that sideline over there. And was that Golden Tate that just ran right by him, just kind of made him look foolish on that touchdown? And then Later in the game, Kerryon Johnson, who's a big back, a nice back. Detroit not known for 100-yard rushing days. In fact, they had like some unbelievable streak. Didn't it last like 5 years or something before they finally did it last week?
2013 on Thanksgiving Day with Reggie Bush.
That's amazing. But this guy is powerful, and he ran. He is a physical guy.
Yeah, he ran with a real reckless abandon, and you could tell when they got that play down there on the goal line where Detroit ran that little ghost fake, and then they ran that outside zone there. You could tell it was something that they had seen on film how Dallas was playing that, and sure enough, he got one-on-one with the safety, and in a lot of situations, you're either the hammer or the nail.
Yeah,
and right there, I'm afraid that Heath was the nail.
That's the truth.
What grade are you giving the secondary?
I'm giving the secondary a C.
Okay.
Yeah, the entire secondary is C.
You're right. I just looked at the stats. Stretch. They had one pass defense all day as a defensive group, not just the DBs. It was Awuzie's one. That's it. That's all they had.
Yeah, one time he got his hand on the slant, and that's something that's got to change. You've got to be breaking some balls up, tipping some balls. You've got to get your hand on the football, and that's why I've been so critical of Byron Jones. I think he's a great athlete. He's got good hips. He can run, but you still have to have instinctive things that cause you to get your hands on the football, and I'm just not seeing that right now.
And we saw what happened last week when a ball gets deflected. The Cowboys had 2 interceptions in Seattle to Earl Thomas for that very reason.
Yeah, and Ed, you made a good point, by the way. Earlier, you had noticed that for people that have tried to monitor that Earl Thomas situation to see if the Cowboys might still have some interest, there was a report today that they're stuck on a second-round pick is what they're now asking for. Adam Schefter, I believe, had that out there. But he was carted off, and he's now in an air cast.
I believe they'll take lefts now because Earl Thomas was carted off, and he made an obscene gesture as he was being carted off, and nobody knows if that's because it was toward the Seattle sideline, so that was a result of a 29-year-old guy being forced to play for his next contract and not being extended, and now this injury is going to put him in a really bad position when he goes to free agency in the offseason.
Wow.
But he's got more career interceptions, 28, and more forced fumbles than all the other Seahawk defensive backs combined, so this is a huge loss for both Earl Thomas and the Seahawks.
We're certain he wasn't saying Seahawks number one.
Yeah, it didn't appear to be that.
Okay,
it might have been Hookem. He was just using the one Seahawks.
It was the camera angle. You couldn't see the other. Couldn't see the pinky.
I tell you, and Stretch, we won't get into this, but boy, you doubting Tom Herman. I mean, this thing is on fire now down in Austin. Okay, linebackers, Cowboys linebackers.
This is an interesting one too because Sean Lee didn't play and the Cowboys won. That almost never happens.
Correct.
Well, and I really do like what the linebackers are doing. You can tell that Sean Lee has kind of taken on a mentor's role with Van Der Esch. Now, there was 1 or 2 times where he did not take a good angle, and the only way you're going to be able to do that is to be in the game. There's no practice you can simulate that. It's just having to play the game. So it's really hard for me to ding him for that. I saw Jalen Smith, again, making some plays. This group is it really is. Overall, when you look at the linebackers, they're active with their feet. They get into coverage. They've got some route recognition, some understanding of what Detroit was trying to do and really what everybody has tried to do to them. So right now I got to give this group a B, and it's a strong B for playing well. The only reason it keeps them out of the A category is you've got to take great angles and you got to be able to get guys on the ground in the screen game.
Is there a chance that they could become like even better in the as far as rushing the quarterback? Right now, it seems like Lawrence is doing most of the damage for this defense. Jalen Smith at times has shown an aptitude for really being good in that area. Is that something you think both these guys, Van Der Esch and Jalen, could really bring as far as maybe being pass rushers in addition to all the other stuff they do?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you see, when the opposing team gets in third and about 7+, you'll notice that Dallas gets their defensive tackles, their inside guys, really wide. And I'm saying wide. They're almost in in 3-eye techniques, outside eye of the guard. And there's 2 gaps in there that are really wide open. And the reason they do that is so that they can run those outside TE games, where they twist. Either the tackle goes first in the end will loop, or the end will come first and the tackle will loop. And they feel good about that because obviously Crawford can get the edge also. But what I like about that particular set is that allows them then to run some games with those linebackers. And Arizona used to be really good back when I was in the league of running, A-gap blitzes where you're getting on both sides of that center and you're causing that protection to turn one way or the other. You saw them do it really good against New York. And you didn't see them do it this week, but I think part of that is because I'm not sure of the comfort level with the defensive coordinator and Van Der Esch, the timing of how you got to kind of bring one linebacker and then loop the other one back in there. But I do think that's something that you're going to see this team continue to explore, really to try to get the matchups that they want outside, but also to get their linebackers active over the center.
All right, and then let's take a peek at this defensive end. They lost Antoine Woods today to injury, and so it'll be we'll just kind of see how they have to fill in there. They're going to get David Irving back, and Jerry said he's not sure how ready he'll be, but he thinks he might be able to make an immediate contribution there. But how this defensive line hold up? We obviously know Tank Lawrence had a tremendous game.
Yeah, but I saw some really good things out of Gregory. I still see big growth in Taco. I still see him. He's really starting to come around. And when I say come around, I think it's a really tough position to transition to when you think about going from college to the NFL, because the best offensive linemen are at tackle, and they're obviously strong and they know how to get their hands on you. And I think there was a real learning curve for him. But as I watch him, I still can see him continue to flash and do some things. And the arrow's pointed up on Taco. I like Gregory. If you can keep him on the field now, like you were saying, you add David Irving. I mean, this is going to be a group that's going to be able to rotate some guys. And the key is continue to get pressure, only bringing 4, because that allows you to drop 7 in the secondary. That allows you to do some things from a coverage standpoint where you can kind of, per se, perfume the pig a little bit from they recognize their weakness and know they're not good back there, but they can do some things still dropping 7 that allows you to be sound in the back end. And when you can get pressure with 4 guys, that gives offensive coordinators a really hard time at trying to get matchups. So I'm giving this group an A and really a great job today. I think they were the true difference maker in the football game. Zeke gets an A, the defensive line get an A, and that's who won the football game for you.
I think we have a new name for this segment, Matt.
What's that?
Perfume the pig.
I like that's a stretch. By the way, I've just got a text, guys. I'm going to share this just with y'all and our Twitter audience or our podcast audience. I'm now hearing someone else was calling the offensive plays today.
Well, if that's the case, whoever it was, he did a good job. And
who was that?
Get him one of those cheap Budweisers, and let's move on.
No, Stretch, this is big news. Chris Richard was calling plays on both sides of the ball today.
Why did I know? Why am I waiting for the ba?
You gotta just let me walk into that thing.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Let you walk into the zonk box. Thanks a lot.
Hey, Stretch.
Yeah,
good.
I like it. Perfume the pig. How about P squared? We can mess with that a little bit.
I like that too. But I'd use perfume the pig liberally this evening on the television broadcast you do.
You're talking about.
I'll give it the college try.
All right. Have a good broadcast tonight, and always appreciate you, Stretch, and best of luck to you in your future.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
There he goes, Glenn Stretch Smith on That's a stretch. Well, good stuff there from Stretch, and was very favorable toward the linebackers and defensive line, but does not really seem to care for this secondary, even though the top-rated Byron Jones continues to put up big numbers when it comes to the film people. But, Ed, this defense does not get takeaways, and that is an issue, and that goes way back. We talked about some things that some good trends that go back to 2011 in terms of the Cowboys having the most 100-yard rushers over that time period. So it shows a commitment to the running game for the most part. But, boy, this is it's really ugly when you start looking at takeaways. And that's a common thread for a team that more often than not has finished out of the running.
Well, and I said before that, I think it's particularly important when you consider the Cowboys' offensive liabilities, that they typically have not been an explosive big play offense. They haven't really demonstrated a significant ability to drive the ball the length of the field very often. And so they're a team that needs some short field opportunities out of a defense that really doesn't provide them. They're among the worst teams in the NFL in recent years at intercepting the football. And, Rod Marinelli, their defensive coordinator, has been known for creating aggressive defenses that force turnovers, but that's rarely happened with the Cowboys, and it's unusual because the Cowboys do seem to do a pretty fair job of creating pressure on the quarterback. DeMarcus Lawrence had 3 sacks in the game today, and maybe David Irving will be the inside presence that allows them to collapse a pocket a little better and put the quarterback under more duress. But they just don't seem to me to be one of these teams that's taught to attack the ball. You just don't really see them punching at the ball and trying to pull at the ball and running guys down from behind and punching it out. That just doesn't seem to be something that they do with any kind of regularity.
Well, that's an interesting point because you see it sometimes in college, and you certainly see it with other teams in the pros. Who we see the other night? There's somebody chase somebody down. I mean, we saw it last week. McDougald from Seattle, he just basically delivers like a punch to the ball to knock one away from Zeke. And you would think that's something they practice like crazy, but you're right. You just don't see a whole lot of that. Ed, one sequence that stands out in my mind, we would be having a whole different conversation. Cowboys have them backed up. It's Detroit's owns 29, 3:52 left, 2nd and 16. Crowd's rocking out there, Ed. They're putting that, they got everybody up there, those guys that those grown men in those starch shirts with the jeans, they're waving flags and really getting the crowd going out there. Stafford, deep right, hits Golden Tate, 35 yards. I mean, that's a problem with this defense. This defense can at times hold up and do a pretty nice job, but they did today were very susceptible to the big play. And then, of course, Matt Stafford, 2 plays later, after a 2-yard loss, they're 2nd and 12, and that's when he hit Golden Tate. And there's some things. As good as this pass rush is at times, this was a dynamic quarterback they were playing against with at least 2, maybe 3, if you count Galladay's kind of a nice player. But Tate and Marvin Jones, those are, quite honestly, those are the 3 wide receivers that the Cowboys don't really have any receivers that match up with those guys. Although I thought Beasley did a nice job.
And Stafford is a good passer, and he's one of the highest paid elite quarterbacks in the NFL, although he hasn't had any significant postseason success. And I think Tate is regarded as a guy who's one of the best in the NFL after the catch, and he demonstrated that certainly today. The problem I have with it is that Stafford's also had a lot of games where he's turned the ball over a lot, and he didn't come close to having a turnover in this game. I guess 3 points I would make about the Cowboy defense is DeMarcus Lawrence, had a career-high 3 sacks, all 3 of the Cowboy sacks he had. He's going to make the Cowboys regret not signing him before Aaron Donald and Khalil Mack reset the market for top rushers this offseason. He's on pace for an 18-sack season. I think there were 2 times when Jeff Heath failed as the last remaining defender to make a tackle to prevent a touchdown. Was injured on one of the plays. That can't happen. I think you alluded to it. He didn't use the sideline to his advantage, and he showed no aggressiveness in allowing Tate to score on the longer play. And then rookie first-round pick Leighton Vander Esch, I thought he did a credible job in his first NFL start. replacing Sean Lee, who the Cowboys have rarely won without. And there didn't appear to be a lot of confusion with Jalen Smith calling the defenses for the first time in his career. So credit to those two guys for those performances.
And by the way, that was one of the things I talked to Van Der Esch about, was what Sean Lee was doing over on the sideline. So they were getting some really good feedback, and he didn't mean this as a joke, but I kind of had to laugh because he said, "Man, he's like having another coach over there." And I think Sean, the more games he misses, the more he'll just be like a coach. And at some point, as great a player as he is, they want Van Der Esch to replace him. They want Jalen Smith to be the future. So today we had a peek at the future of this linebacking core. And it's one that as good as Sean Lee is, from year to year, you can't depend on him to always be there. And so we'll see if they can kind of build on this performance. But I'll say this, the Wolf Hunter is he's referred to by the coaches. Van Der Esch, a man who illegally hunts wolves in parts of Alaska and other places. I thought he's got a little edge to him. Like, he doesn't like being questioned about, what was it like? What was your first deal like? He's kind of like, hey, I'm here. I'm ready. I got the confidence. And so I kind of appreciate that about him.
Well, I think he better continue to play well because, as we all know, the Cowboys could have used an explosive receiver, given that they let go of Dez Bryant, and we've seen them struggle at the position. A lot of people think it's one of the worst groups of receivers in recent NFL history that the Cowboys are putting out there with Dak Prescott right now. And they could have had Calvin Ridley, who's now got 6 touchdown catches as a rookie with the Atlanta Falcons. And I'll give you that the Falcons have far better supporting personnel, and Matt Ryan's a better passer than Dak Prescott. But still, the guy has 6 touchdown catches as a rookie, and that's the player that the Cowboys were choosing between when they decided to take Leighton Van Der Esch. And they opted to go with Van Der Esch because they did want to have an ability to continue winning games without Sean Lee, which they had not been able to do the past 3 or 4 years.
And I'll do what you usually do. I'll just provide you with a little stat I've run across from our old pals at ESPN Stats and Info. That was six scores in the first 4 games. That's the most by a rookie since 1952. How about that?
Calvin Ridley
1952.
Star on his helmet.
Was taken 20th, 1 pick after Leighton Van Der Esch. Ed, it's been a pleasure, and we had a lot to talk about. There's a lot of excitement around the this team improving to 2-2, and we thank all that you've done, Ed, on the Facebook community. The Doomsday Podcast Facebook is a place you can find us, and then our individual Facebook. Feel free to jump over there, and then there's just so many other ways to experience the Doomsday Podcast. And we'll be we thanks the Frito up here at Frito Nation Productions. We'll be dropping this pretty soon here, and so we'll have everybody this evening and then driving to work tomorrow. We look forward to visiting with you. So Ed, for everybody who's been a part of this, I just want to tell everybody have a great week, and hope you have safe travels. I hope you come back to us at some point.
I'll be back when I'm done watching games with the fireplace, roasting my toes, and enjoying being able to go back and forth and watch replays as much as I want to see exactly what happened.
I'm sorry, forced retirement isn't going any better for you. All right, I'll visit with you soon. Good work, and we'll talk to you soon. Good night, everybody.
Shining, stockings have been hung. You're praying for your daughter, lighting candles for your son. They're living in the city now, you don't see them anymore. This year will not be like the ones before. And the streets are all but empty, the bars have all shut down, and it's hard to find a friend inside this godforsaken town. That emptiness, it feels from your head down to your toes. I'm sorry, baby, that's just the way it goes.
Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl. And some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.